Hi everybody, welcome to DayZ, welcome to the DayZ editor, and in this video we're going to be looking at the DayZ expansion conversion files that the amazing Don Sibleys has created. Now if you don't know about this already, what Don has done is, with the permission of the PC expansion mod owners, he's taken the changes they've made to the Chernarus map and adapted them for console. However, there are many files, and what you may well find is that although you can load them all on things like PlayStation 5s and Xbox One S's and Xbox One X's, if you have many other files, not all of them will work if you have them all loaded on the server. Especially if people are coming on in PS4s and Xbox Ones, and you've got lots of other things going on as well, lots of other custom JSON. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is going through and looking at the various areas so that you can decide what you may well want to install on your server. So in the description below this video, you'll find a link to Don's video, Don's GitHub, with the files on, a link to DayZ expansion PC mod, and you'll also see a load of timestamps for the various places. So let's get started and let's look at Berezino, as you can see here. Now the beauty with the DayZ editor is that I can toggle on and off where the added items are, and what you'll see is lots of the items are added foliage and grass and weeds and trees and that sort of stuff, which definitely add some interest to the area and add some ambience as well. But what really makes the difference, I think, in Berezino is this huge traffic jam that kind of starts back there and makes its way past the police station and then on down into the real centre of town. If we go over here, what you'll see is basically lots of overgrown stuff, you know, which is cool. And so I guess if you're thinking about, is the Berezino edition worth putting on, I think for the changes it makes in the corner, definitely so. So if we come to over here, what you'll find is lots of basically foliage and grass. And then on this road, if we come down here, you can kind of tell yourself, you know, this is all added foliage on and grass. So an interesting addition. I love the additions outside the police station, and so that is the additions to Berezino. Next we've got Cherno Grass Enhancement 1. As you can see, there is an awful lot in this file, so let's jump in and have a look. And what you'll find is, if we just go up here to the top of the hill first, you'll see these added little bits up here, and then if we scroll down, you can see we've got more foliage, more trees, that sort of thing has been added in to give this a little bit more of a overgrown feel. But where the action really starts, if we come down towards Cherno Grass town properly, again we've got a lot more sort of foliage being added here, and then we've got sort of junk that's been added to make it a little bit more lived in. Love these bosses on their side, looks really cool, that. And then if we go over here, as you can see, we've got, you know, some more vehicles. But when you get over towards the this part of Cherno, around the roundabout, you get this absolutely massive traffic jam again. That is quite stunning when you come over to it, and it goes all the way to the petrol station that is by the is there a graveyard here outside the church? No, it's just goes all the way to there, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Look at this, well worth adding to your server, this one, and it goes all the way down there as well. So that's Cherno Grass Enhancement 1. So this is Cherno Enhancement 2. And now this is mainly a foliage and trees and grass sort of addition. But don't let that put you off, because it really changes the feeling as you come into Chernogorsk from the west. This is the roundabout with the tank on, and as you can see, you know, this is completely different to what you would normally expect. So although there aren't that many additions in terms of wrecks and vehicles and roadblocks and things like that, it really does make this area of the city feel, you know, older than it does when you're playing it in the vanilla version of the game. I think even these additions of the grass really make a big difference that way. And basically that's what it does all the way across and all the way up towards the block of flats area over here. In fact, if we come over here, you'll see that that one is just trees there. So worth looking at. Not quite as impressive in terms of, you know, all the vehicles that you get in some of the others editions, but it definitely gives it a lot more of a subtle feel with the addition of all of this grass and trees, and making the area feel much more overgrown. Hi everybody, so now we're with Cherno or Chernogorsk Forest 1, and this could be one of the files that you decide to skip on your console server, especially if you're kind of looking for space, because although it's very, very impressive with the sheer number of placements we have, almost all of these placements are trees and bushes and the like, and it does really, really change the way this part of Chernogorsk feels, as you can imagine, because we've suddenly got this forest where we didn't have one before. I think there are other files that, you know, sort of add more to the game. So I would probably have to think long and hard about having Cherno Forest 1 installed if it was at the expense of some of the more impressive files that you're going to be seeing throughout this video. So I've loaded up Chernogorsk Forest 2, and like its sibling, this one is really just adding lots of shrubbery to Chernogorsk, and in fact it's really just kind of the western side of Chernogorsk, and again it's another impressive one in terms of the sheer number of trees and shrubs that are added, but maybe this is another one of those files that you could probably do without, unless of course you had a specific reason for really concentrating on having an overgrown Chernogorsk. But again, this video is all about helping those people who've got console servers, you know, who are trying to save some memory bandwidth, some memory allocation by not installing all of Don's amazing files, but concentrating on the ones that would have the most impact on your server in terms of, you know, that sheer wow factor that you would get as people discover these new areas as they explore your server. So we're still with Cherno with this one, and this is Cherno Grass 1 and 2. I've kind of put them together because, again, I think this is probably a file that if you're looking to save space, you could probably do without. Undoubtedly it adds a lot of immersion to your server by adding a lot of grass and a lot of overgrown grass over the roads, which definitely takes us, you know, a couple of years past where DayZ Chernarus is in the vanilla game, but there is an awful lot of objects here that maybe could be better off spent on more exciting files, dare I say it, especially if, as I say, you're trying to save space and you're trying to maybe install some of the files that include more objects rather than just grass. Now we're looking at the Cherno High School file, and this one actually is quite interesting because it's very, very small, so it's one you're probably worth putting onto your server. And what it does is it adds loads of stuff inside the gym at the high school, sort of up on the hill at Chernogorsk. So as you can see, we end up with like kind of with all of these beds and all of these little bits. Now I really like these small files that are just adding items inside particular places, because this really would be a surprise if you were wandering around Chernogorsk and you come up to the high-rise area and you just happen to wander into the school, because we all know that, you know, DayZ, Chernarus and Livonia and custom maps, they're kind of made up of the same buildings, aren't they, over and over again. Some of the buildings are more common than others, but you know, we've all been inside the high school, we've all looked around inside it, and we've all been into the gym, and you probably thought, oh, the gym's pretty cool because it's got like the basketball court, hasn't it? But then you come across this, where you've got this, I guess it's some sort of, it's almost like a operations area. Maybe we've got the radios, we've got the computers, and we've got the beds. Maybe a sort of survival area, and you know, and I really like that. So there we go. So that's Cherno High School. One I would say is definitely worth adding. So for this file, we've moved down the coast to the east from Cherno Grass to Elektrozavodsk, and this is a pretty big file. But let's jump in and kind of see what we get. As with the editor, we can press Y and we can get rid of the little white icons, and what you can see here again is an awful lot of overgrown stuff, but then you have things like these barricades, and it really brings a sense of story, you know, to what happened to the centre of Elektrozavodsk, especially in this particular area here. So if we slide over here and press Y, you can see as if you're coming into this part of Elektrozavodsk, we can see you kind of have the overground stuff. We've got this new tank here in this kind of square, and we've got these new roadblocks up here, and it all looks, yeah, it looks pretty good. I enjoy this. Definitely looks like something happened in Elektrozavodsk. And then if we go further to the east, what you'll see here is an awful lot more trees and foliage. Again, bringing in that, this, you know, this isn't a day after the apocalypse. This is, you know, a couple of years after. There's been more than enough time for trees to grow, for grass to start covering up the tarmac, and for generally the world to have a much more lived-in kind of feeling, like you can see with all this sort of stuff here. So again, I think you're probably going to have to choose when it comes to things like the Elektrozavodsk, the Svetlojarsk, or the Cherno Grass files, if you've got a lot more other custom structures on your server. But I really like this one because I like the changes it makes to the towns, because you can imagine, you know, the towns, maybe where certain towns, this is where people kind of retreated from some of the worst towns to kind of try and defend themselves against the zombie hordes, and did all they could to kind of stay alive, and this is where sort of chaos happened. So there we go, that is Elektrozavodsk. So now we're looking at the evacuation file, and this is up in the northwest of the map, based around the Tricresta area. And this is another really cool one, if you ask me, because the beauty of this one, it takes the existing theme that is going on in Tricresta, which is, you know, there's quite a few wrecks. There's an idea that, you know, people made it here, but maybe they didn't get out, and just takes it to the next level with, you know, hundreds of car wrecks. This massive queue that goes through here, and we've got all the overgrown grass and the trees to, you know, make you know that this happened, you know, this happened a while ago, this, and something pretty terrible happened here as well, you know, with the thousands of people who were trying to make their way out of Chernarus. And maybe they were trying to get to the petrol station here, maybe they were trying to get past the petrol station at the fuel station, but you know, there was just this huge tailback because of people trying to get in there. Maybe the fuel station ran out of fuel, and who knows what happened to the people here. Well, we probably know what happened to them. They would have been turned into zombies. But the visual storytelling is top notch, and it just gives you that extra sense of immersion when you get somewhere like this. And I think I'd highly recommend you should consider having evacuation as part of your server, because again, it's another one of those ones where if people aren't familiar with the map, or even if they are, you know, they would find their way over here to the far western side of sort of northwestern side of Chernarus. Maybe they're on their way to Tisy or something like that, or to the biathlon area, you know, or the ski area, and they come across this amazing area that is just, you know, it just tells you so much of a story about, you know, what happened in the apocalypse in DayZ, and here we are, you know, a few years later, where nature has started to take over again, to kind of reclaim the land, but we kind of still see what's been going on. This is the factory file, and so we've got Solnechniy here on the east coast of Chernarus. And if we scroll up here, we can actually see this again. This is quite a subtle few additions, not many at all really, will not add much load to your server, but as you can see, we're just adding this little bit of clutter to this area. And you've got this new building site here. Again, just to, as your survivors will be coming through, if they're experienced with the map, they might go, ooh, what's this? If they're not experienced with the map, one of the beauties of these expansion files that Don has so gloriously adapted for console is they're done very, very well. And unless you're really familiar with DayZ and things like the DayZ editor and placing things, you'd just assume these were vanilla and they were there, you know, from the game right from the start and haven't been added in. So factory, definitely worth considering adding to your server. Now let's take a look at the Gorka file, and this is another example of one of the expansion files that again is quite subtle. Although it appears that there's, you know, hundreds and hundreds of items, which there are, most of them are adding things like the clutter of grass and trees and bushes to Gorka. So you can kind of see here, this is a good example here. So you've got kind of the grass that's been added to the tarmac and the roads, but then we also have, you know, the rubbish pile that's been added as well. And again, if you were new to DayZ and coming through this area, you may well just think, oh, this is a bit overgrown compared to some of the other areas of the map, and obviously you'd be right. But if you're an existing DayZ player who is familiar with Gorka, again, it's another one of those ones where you go, oh, this is a bit more overgrown since I came here last. And I really like that idea of just going, oh, right, yeah, this is slightly more overgrown. So I guess it would, with Gorka, it would really depend on what other mods, what other files you had nearby to whether you'd want to install this one. But again, it's a nice subtle one. Lots and lots of grass, lots and lots of clutter in terms of foliage and bushes and things, and then quite a lot of extra little bits just to add that little bit of seasoning to the area as well. Now we're looking at the Grass Coast Road file, and as the name would suggest, if we jump in and have a look round, you can see that this is really just adding foliage and grass to along the coast road. Although there's an awful lot of items in this particular file, as you would imagine, in order to spawn all this grass all the way along the coast road, I do like it. It does make the new players or the new spawns, as soon as you spawn in and you come across the grass on the coast road, straight away you're like, oh wait a minute, this is different. This is different from what I would normally expect from a server. Of course, if you're new to DayZ, you know, you won't probably be aware of that. But if you were an experienced DayZ player, you know, when you spawn along the coast and then you come in and you see all this grass, you're like, oh, this is definitely telling you in clear ways that something is different about this server. Time has moved on. This isn't the DayZ that you're familiar with. This is one that is 6, 7, 8 months, 2, 3, 4, 5 years after when DayZ Vanilla is set, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. So it may well be worth kind of having this as maybe as like a must-have installed on your server. But of course, ultimately, it's down to you and what other files you may well want to install. But it's pretty impressive as it snakes all the way up the east coast and finishes up by Svetlogorsk. Here we are down at the southwest of Chernarus, and we are at Kamenka. And as soon as you jump in, it should be pretty obvious what this file is all about, which is making Kamenka incredibly overgrown. You know, as you approach here for the first time from the east or from the coast, if you've spawned in, it will be all about the fact that we have got so many new trees, bushes, we've got the grass, making this place seem much older than it would be in vanilla DayZ. And yeah, I mean, you know, and I really like that. I think what we really need is, and I don't know whether this will ever happen anytime soon, but it would be nice to have some sort of mod eventually which uses, I don't know, some sort of AI to add these sorts of trees and this sorts of experience to the entirety of the map. Now we can't do that at the moment because of the sheer memory bandwidth limitations that we're up against on PC and console. I mean, obviously mainly console, mainly the older consoles. But it would be great to be able to offer Chernarus as it is, a week after the apocalypse has happened, and then Chernarus 5 to 10 years after the apocalypse has happened, as we can see with this pretty amazing Kamenka file. We're now in the southeast of Chernarus by Skillisky Island, and we are of course at Kamyshovo, and this is one of the larger files as well, and it kind of shows in the sheer number of objects that have been added here. Absolutely amazing. Now I particularly like to the I guess, what do you call it, the east? Yeah, to the east of the town. We've got all these sort of dead trees that have been added, and there's some ruins as well that have been added in, which kind of add a little bit more flavour to this part of the town. We've got another ruin here at the pond, and then as we go further into Kamyshovo, we've got all of this. I guess I like to call it sort of almost like flavouring that they're adding with all these extra trees that are overgrown, and the extra grass that is all along the train tracks, and the sheer number of objects is it's mind-boggling how long it must have taken someone to do this. And then if we go into the town by the police station, we've got some extra bits here just to make it look that little bit more like something happened. There was people hanging on here trying to survive, and then time has moved on. Because we've got the overgrowth has started to move in. The trees are growing in places where they wouldn't do during the non-apocalypse, and the whole area has obviously been abandoned for several years after that. So I really like Kamyshovo, but again, I think you're going to have that problem of deciding, especially with these larger files, which ones you go for. Are you going to be going for the Cherno Grass files? Are you going to be going for the Svetlojarsk files? Are you going to be going for the Kamyshovo files? Because they are pretty big, and if you're limiting the amount of expansion mod custom JSONs you're adding to the server, then this is one of those big ones where you've really got to think, do I really want to add this one in? Is this what my players want? I mean, I like it because it's all about the visual storytelling, and I really like ruined buildings as well. I don't think there's enough ruined buildings in Chernarus. There should be at least as many as there are on Livonia, and I love the look of the east of Kamyshovo. So there we go. So this is the Crew Toy Cap file, and this is very interesting, this one as well. We're sort of southeast of Tulga, up from Kamyshovo, just across the water from Skillisky Island, and what you can see here is a really cool thing, which is where they've added a little hamlet to this part of the map. So you may well know, when you come round the kind of the southeast corner of Chernarus, you kind of have these houses here, and you're normally looking here for some supplies after you kind of do before you do the long run up the east coast. And here what they've added is some houses and some barns, just to add that little bit more opportunities for exploration, and obviously for looting as well. Actually, I haven't talked about looting yet in this video, but basically the thing to remember is all we're talking about here with these custom JSONs is the ability to spawn in these objects and these structures. Nothing about spawning loot. Spawning loot will come when we have a map group pos and map group proto files for these particular areas. And the way that will happen, and I understand that Don is working on them right now, they will be broken up to match the custom object files, because if you're going to have certain of the files spawning in on your server, you've got to make sure you've got the matching loot spawning files as well. Otherwise you'll end up with loot spawning in midair, and none of us want that. But I think this is pretty cool. I like this. I like these subtle little extra bits where, again, if you're familiar with DayZ, you'd be running up here and you'd be like, oh, what's this? Oh, let's have a look around here. And if you're not familiar with DayZ, maybe this will just seem like normal, and it's just an extra little hamlet, an extra little village to come across and to explore. We're in the west of Chernarus now, and this is the Myshkino file. And I think this really points towards the type of change that the expansion team would love to do, and I would love to do, across the whole of Chernarus, because this one really concentrates on making the world look overgrown. I mean, let me just zoom in here a little bit so you get a better idea. I mean, look at this. Look at this route into this particular area, this particular little hamlet, this particular little village. I mean, it looks absolutely fantastic, doesn't it? With all the extra grass, the extra trees, the shrubs. You know, this is a different DayZ. This is DayZ 5-10 years down the line from when the apocalypse started, when the crisis started, and I love it. I think it's just a shame that we can't bring this kind of transformation to the entirety of the map. Maybe that will be coming with DayZ 2 when we're working with hardware that is much more powerful than we have at the moment. But again, I think this may well be, they're almost like test areas, I think, these areas, because what's going to happen is people are going to be coming to your server, and they're going to be going through ordinary vanilla areas, and you know, everything's going to be as normal. Maybe you've got your own custom areas, and then they're going to be coming into an area like this, and they'll be going like, wow, this is a bit different, isn't it? And hopefully, maybe some of the players that have been playing DayZ a little bit longer will be able to appreciate these areas for what they are, and that is kind of an example, you know, of what could be with DayZ, you know, what we could getting it look like if we just had that little bit more power. Or maybe if they built some of these areas straight into the base game, although I suspect that the reason why many of the interiors of the base game and, you know, the exteriors and some of the areas are the way they are in terms of maybe being a little bit bare is because of memory limitations on the older PCs and on consoles as well. But definitely worth looking at this particular file, and I just love the vibes that it gives off for this older, more overgrown version of Chernarus that is done, you know, in such a cool way. So now we're going to be going through one of the more popular routes, I guess, north, if you're spawning sort of in the middle near Cherno, and that's through Nadezhdino. And to really kind of appreciate, I think, this particular file, we've really got to get down low. We've got to turn off the little white boxes, and we've just got to kind of fly in. Because if you're familiar with DayZ and this route, this will look very, very different indeed. And this is a really classic one of these expansion files that just makes the whole area look way older than it is in the vanilla game. I mean, you can just see here the attention to detail with all these grasses and the extra trees and the bushes that have been added really do give this area a completely different character as you're passing through. And I think the more I've reviewed these different files, you know, and seeing what they've got in them, I've been really scratching my head about thinking, okay, so for each kind of wipe on my community servers, and they tend to wipe every sort of 6 months, I think I'm going to have a theme, and we're going to have kind of different areas that have some of these expansion files. Because the problem I have is that on my servers I have a mix of players on PC, and then we have PlayStation and Xbox servers, and on those PlayStation and Xbox servers we also have things like PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones. So I don't want to overface those servers with making sure that, you know, there's too much on them by using every single one of the expansion files. But I do want people to be able to enjoy these. And also, I guess one of the other things, you know, we haven't really discussed is the fact that although these files might load in fine to start off with on your server, who knows, you know, 2 months down the line, if you're running a community Nitrado server for Xbox or PlayStation, and you're loading in other custom locations as well, it could be that, you know, it starts to not run quite so well. But I really like the feel of this file, and I think it's one I'm probably going to use. Now we're looking at the RandomStuff file, which really is kind of just that, random stuff. So for example, if we go over here, basically what we have is a fence going all the way around a field, and then we have some more trees and bushes that have been added as well. That's on the east coast, and then if we go up here to there, all we've got here is some panels, I think. Let's go and have a look, see if we can we actually find it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, let's zoom in. Now, this isn't a particularly large file, so it's probably one that I'd suggest you're probably going to install anyway, because you might not even recognize the things that are spawning in. Let's just have a look over here as well. So we can look over here, and here we have a shooting range that's been added, which is a little bit of fun, and maybe this kind of highlights the fact that when the expansion team were doing these files, maybe different people working on different aspects of them, and maybe the different people had different amounts of time that they could dedicate to the project. But Random Objects is very small, it adds a few little things, fairly easy to install, and probably isn't going to make that much difference to your server whether you've loaded it or not. So this is the roads file, and this probably could be another one that you choose not to install on your server if you're kind of pushed for space and want to save space, because it involves adding an awful lot of greenery and grass and that sort of thing, which if you're running a community server on a console, it could be the fact that, will this make that big a difference in terms of immersion? My answer to that probably is going to be, I don't think it really will. I mean, it's a nice to have one, but I don't think it's an essential one, because although it's good to make some of these areas look overgrown, and undoubtedly they're much more immersive when they are more overgrown, like you can see here, but is it a bigger impact as you get with some of the other files? The answer probably from me is no. So this is probably one of the ones that I would skip if I was trying to save some space. In the far south of Chernarus now, in fact we're so far south that we're actually in the sea. So this is Prison Island here. So let's jump into here, and this is the sea platform file. And I don't know, this is very, very cool if you ask me. There's the prison island there, and as you can see we've kind of got this runway, and then we've got this area with lots of cargo containers, and then we've got this sort of kind of warehouse area in the middle. Now I know on console we do have a little problem with the fact that we can't mod in any boats or any helicopters or anything like this, but what Don has done is when he put this particular file together, he made it so it's not that too far a swim from the from Prison Island to the sea platform. And I quite like this one. It's a bit of an Easter egg, isn't it? A player has to be pretty committed to want to come here, but it is somewhere that as soon as players really start to know about it, they'll probably want to check it out and come over, especially when we get the loot files as well from Don, so that maybe you could put some high-end loot here, or maybe even do some custom JSONs of your own, which spawn in high-end loot anyway in particular places. So C platform, I think this is probably one for me. Here we are on the east coast of Chernarus, and we are of course at Solnechniy, and this is another file which really concentrates on making the area look overgrown, to throw us forward in time past where the vanilla version of DayZ is in terms of timescales, to maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, where there are way more trees, and they just create this, and overgrown areas as well, and just creates this much better sense of, for me anyway, immersion. And as I've said before in little segments of this video, it's just a shame that we can't do this for the entirety of the map, because I think it really does make the map so much better having all of these overgrown areas. I mean, just look at this particular area here. I just love this look. Care and attention that have gone into this to make it look like this is very, very good indeed. So again, you're going to have to make a decision, aren't you? Which areas of the map do you want your players to experience in a more overgrown version of Chernarus that is a couple of years down the line from the initial outbreak? And I think probably this one, it's not too big, so I think this file is definitely one you should be looking at. At the Staroye file, down here. And you can see straight away from the bird's eye view that this is a file that again is really concentrating on making this area look overgrown and more in the future from the vanilla DayZ. And if you see, even if we just kind of come here and then look down into the hamlet, down into village from here, you can just by scrolling around, you can see how much more overgrown and immersive this particular area of the map looks. Even these little things like the grass just creeping in over the roads looks I think looks absolutely fantastic. Quite a few objects in this particular one, as you'd expect for anything where we've got to try and make it look overgrown. But for me, this is quite a heavy area in terms of footfall, isn't it, normally on a map, Staroye? So I think this is probably one you should seriously consider about having on your server. And maybe if you don't have it every time, it's one that you're going to install and have in pretty heavy rotation so people can experience what it's like to move through this overgrown area of the map. We're into one of the really big files now. This is Svetlogorsk 1, and this is incredibly impressive, just the first file by itself. So if we fly in from kind of the south side of Svetlogorsk, you can see already, we've got this highly immersive, we've got all the grass coming in, we've got the extra wrecks, we've got the trees, a feeling that stuff has gone down in this city. There's definitely been some fighting going along. There's definitely been rioting. There's definitely been a struggle to survive that unfortunately has been lost because everybody's infected now. But you can see by the sheer number of objects that have been added to this city that it really transforms the way it looks. However, there is also the question about whether something like this, in a similar way to maybe the Cherno files as well, is it just a little bit too much? And it's going to be interesting over the following weeks and months as we become more familiar with the use of these files, how they affect things like driving and even running around on a high pop server. It's okay me doing this on my PC in DayZ Editor where there's no real strain on my computer, but when you're on a high pop server where people are driving cars around and they're doing that in things like Xbox Ones and PlayStation 4s, will it make a big difference? Now this is very, very impressive though. This is one of those kind of flagpole files that I think maybe what we're going to do is you're going to kind of introduce your communities to the ideas of these expansion files and say, look, okay, so we're going to run with overgrown Svetlogorsk for a couple of months or maybe to your wipe, and then we're going to run with something else afterwards. We're going to move it around to give people different experiences, but yeah, a very impressive file, an awful lot of objects being added to Svetlogorsk, and well, let's look at Svetlogorsk 2 next. So this is Svetlogorsk 2, and this may be one that if you're looking to save space on your server could be one that you miss out, because basically it's adding an awful lot of overgrown grass and foliage and bushes and that sort of thing to your server. And it could be that actually Svetlogorsk 1 is impressive enough on itself without having to add all these extra little bits of grass, because this and bushes and stuff, because this is it's a pretty big file. It's over a meg, so there is an awful lot of objects spawning in. But as you can see from what we're looking at here and what we can see on the right hand side is most of them, most of the bits we're seeing added in are overgrown bits of grass and foliage, and something that maybe we could do without, if we're looking to save space, and also if we're in a situation where perhaps the server's lagging a little bit, because I do worry a bit with Svetlogorsk 1 and 2 how this will be handled on an older console, or if, for example, you've got a high pop server, or maybe you're in a situation where you've got lots of other custom files in this particular area as well that could well impede the smooth running of your server, especially for people with things like PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones. And here we are up in the far northwest of Chernarus for the final file we're looking at today, which is the Tisy expansion file. And this one again really concentrates on just making an overgrown area even more overgrown. And sometimes it'd be tricky if you haven't been up to these areas for a while to understand kind of the changes that we're seeing. And I think what's probably surprised me the most going through these files about how much work has obviously gone into them by the expansion team and with Don converting them so we can use them as console as well, but also how you may well really want to mix and match the DayZ expansion console converted files also with the DayZ overgrown files that Don's done as well. And it could be you want to do something like, you know, put the major files like the Cherno Grass ones or the Elektrozavodsk ones or the Berezino ones, the ones that kind of add a lot more visual storytelling to the middle of those areas, or to those areas in general, and then maybe use something like the DayZ overgrown mods in other areas as well. But I mean, what you can clearly see here up in Tisy is an awful lot of work to make this area look older, to look like it is from several years past the beginning of the apocalypse and not just a few days, as sometimes it feels like that in the vanilla game of DayZ. So I guess probably now it's time to think about a conclusion as well. You know, which files should you consider putting on? And I think really I can't make that decision for you. I mean, for me on my particular servers, what I'm probably going to be doing is where I know that we've got a majority, well, where we've got the PC servers, I'm just going to install them all. But I'm probably not going to install DayZ expansion and DayZ overgrown. It's going to be one or the other for the time being anyway. And then for my servers where I have lots of people still using older consoles, I'm going to just pick out 2 or 3 of the bigger files, and I may even do it in seasons. So for one season we'll have Cherno Grass, another season we'll have Elektro, another season we'll have Berezino, then we'll have Elektrozavodsk, maybe another season we will have the Chernarus overgrown mod, and do it that way. But all of this is incredibly exciting. Massive thanks must go out to the expansion team for allowing Don to produce these files, and of course to the master himself, Don Sibleys, for doing all of the work in converting these files so that we can use them on our community servers for console, because this really is a game changer, and I'm really looking forward to sharing these with everybody on my servers, and I'm sure you'll be looking forward to doing exactly the same thing. So well done, Don, well done expansion team, and if you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe, and I will of course see you again soon.